what I want to know is, how did you get into, so going from your diagnosis, which, how, well, first and foremost, how was that for you in terms of finding that sort of answer that you mentioned before? How was that for you, being told that? Did that kind of just make things feel like it made sense,
Hmm.
or did it just kind of, like, what was the process upon hearing your diagnosis?
Yeah, the hardest part of that was getting a clinician because there are not a lot of clinicians that work with adults. So I had to go through a very long waiting period
Mm,
to even get to somebody. So we always say that self diagnosis is valid because diagnosis is a privilege. A lot of people will never have access to a
yeah,
formal diagnosis, and that's okay.
yeah.
So once I finally went through that whole process, it was a lot of relief.
Mm,
And then you just sort of look back on your whole life and go, oh, so that's why that happened. That's
yeah.
why I did that bizarre thing, or that is why this never made sense. So you just sort of go back. And then I think there's some sadness too. It's like,
Mhm.
man, if I had known about this when I was a kid or even a teenager, what could have been different for me?
Yeah, that is actually a really interesting point, because having that point of recognition at least gives you a framework and understanding as to why this has happened, why that person's reacted that way, why this has unfolded in this particular fashion. Not having that and just kind of presuming, I don't even know. Like, when you were having these experiences, you were talking about having this conversation a lot of the time, being told
Mhm.
that people just don't like you. That's
Mhm.
obviously got to chip away at your self-esteem. And
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. There are huge instances of comorbid anxiety and depression
Mm,
amongst neurodivergent people. And often there are people will get a diagnosis of anxiety, depression, or bipolar or borderline personality disorder. And ultimately, they find out that truly the true cause of a lot of their problems stem from neurodiversity,
right,
neurodivergent conditions they might have that were under or misdiagnosed, and that these other things tend to be secondary. They tend to be
right.
caused by this life experience of my wife just came out as trans, and she talks about this experience of just living her whole life in a body that she knew wasn't hers. Like she
Mm,
just knew it was wrong. So every day of your life, you just have this feeling, this gnawing feeling that something is wrong,
right.
that something doesn't fit. And then you get that verification from these individuals who say, "Yep, people don't like you, or people think you're mean, or every professional person has to be able to do this. So if you can't, you know, and you at the same time generally know you're smart and you know that there are things that you do well, it is so conflicting. I always say that I spent most of my life feeling like I was just a bag of wasted potential
Wow.
because I knew that I was smart. I knew that people told me all the time I had capabilities to do these huge things and so much potential, but then I couldn't get out of bed. Like, how do you reconcile if you are able to do all of these things and you can't brush your teeth, then it's your fault, right? You are just
Right.
lazy. You're lazy, or you're not as smart as people have thought you are. You fooled them. And so yeah, it is very conflicting, for sure. It's a tough time.